Not long ago, I reviewed the Nivada Grenchen Antarctic. This time around, I'm reviewing the Antarctic Glacier. The fact is, I wrote to Nivada and asked to review the Antarctic, and they sent me both for me to review. The Antarctic is a really nice watch, and it gives me a chance to talk a little bit about what you get for your money. So, let's dive in. The model I have on loan is the Antarctic Glacier with a tuxedo dial in 38mm on a beads of rice bracelet. It's got a vertically brushed silver and anthracite two-tone dial, and it's the one they call the tuxedo. It has applied steel indexes on the dark outer ring. It's got Dauphine hands and a date display at 3 o'clock. The embossed caseback depicts a US base in Antarctica, calling back to the origins of the Antarctic watches. The watch, as stated, is 38mm. It's got a thickness of just under 12mm, 11.95. The lug-to-lug is 45mm. The case is stainless steel. The lug width is 20mm and it tapers to 16mm at the clasp. That's on the more aggressive side, and it makes for a dressier look. It's got 100 meters of water resistance. Inside is a Swiss Soprod PO24 automatic movement. It beats at 4 Hertz, 38 hours of power reserve, and the price is $1,095. I like when brands put thought into the unboxing experience. This is a watch that you're most likely buying online, so first impressions matter. Here I got a small box with a cardboard sleeve that had a photo of the watch on the outside. Under the sleeve, there was a foam and cardboard box which has a soft leather lid. The watch itself immediately looks well put together, even before handling it. The case has twisted-ish lugs, similar but not identical to Omega twisted lugs. This allows for a flat polished surface on the part that runs alongside the bracelet, while the outer flanks have a softer brushing. The bezel is fully polished and really well done. The crown is what I call a smushed P. It's not too big, it's not too small. The case flank has a subtle polished bevel to it on the side closest to the wrist. I like this attention to detail because that's a place where they could have easily just rounded off the case. It's all very clean, it's all very crisp. It's not a sharp case like the New Planet Ocean. It has a slightly more rounded feel to it, and I think that works well for this kind of vintage reinterpretation. The dial sits under a domed crystal. There's a lot of dome. Again, it's very vintage, it's clean. There's a little bit of distortion at the edges because of the dome, and again, that also works really well. The dial itself has 2 tracks or layers. The outer track is this light gray blue anthracite kind of color with applied indices at 1-hour intervals. Between the applied markers, there are exclamation marks denoting the minute positions. The date window sits at 3 o'clock, and it has a little squared frame in metallic surrounding it. It's a little detail that you sometimes see brands skimp on. You'll find that a watch like the Tissot Quartz PRX has no frame, but the automatic PRX does. It's one of those teeny tiny things you don't think about that adds a teeny tiny little bit of extra cost to the production. The inner track is a vertically brushed silver gray. You get a printed Nivada logo at the top and the Antarctic Glacier logo at 6 o'clock. The Dauphine hands, I'd say, are thin and they are elegant. There's a thin sliver of lume that has a faux tina color to it in its non-lumed state. Both the inner track and the outer track are in one level. There's not a step or a level difference. It's all really well executed. Everything is crisp, it's sharp, it's detailed. I have to say also that this dial is a massive step up from the Chrono King that I also reviewed. This Antarctic just stands up to scrutiny with a macro lens much, much more. The caseback has an embossed drawing of the US Antarctic base. It's in a copper, bronze, goldish color. Honestly, I don't particularly like it. I feel it's a little bit out of place in terms of color, and the embossing, understandably, of course, doesn't have the crispness of an engraved caseback. The bracelet, beads of rice. Compared to a Doxa, this one is much tighter in fit. It doesn't have that loose feel or loose sound that a Doxa 300T bracelet has. This bracelet feels really well put together, and it doesn't give me the impression that it's going to loosen anytime soon. I think there's a good amount of detail on the bracelet. The flanks have a high polish. They are also screw-in pins. I'll get back to those because I have a point about those. The outer links have a slight satin look to them. The beads in the center are highly polished. So what you're getting in terms of feel is something akin to the bracelet on the IWC Pilot Mark 20. It's this middle spot where it's not completely dressy, but it's not fully brushed with a complete tool watch nature to it. It's a good middle ground. The clasp doesn't have quick adjust. That's a shame, but it would probably have tacked on some extra cost. It does have 7 push pin adjustment positions. The clasp itself isn't overly long, so it's not going to be annoying in terms of balance. The exposed surface of the clasp has a brush component to it and polished edges. The center is also raised a little above the sides. The brushing as the primary finishing is a good choice. It's going to limit the effects of wear and tear and visible scratches. It just won't be as noticeable compared to if you had a fully mirror polished center part of the clasp. The case itself is milled, but the actual surface seems like it's been pressed and not cut. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but the logo just doesn't feel quite as crisp as, for example, a Rolex logo. The opening mechanism is solid, the underside of the bracelet is super flat, and there's not anything that grabbed the hairs on my arms, and it just sat really, really well. I know that half of the people watching this channel have not subscribed to this channel. So if you're one of those people who are relatively new here and haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. On this channel, I just talk about watches that I love. I talk about everything watch related, the watch market and specific watches sometimes. I love talking about watches. I'm in nobody's pocket. I'm unbiased and I just enjoy watches. So come enjoy them with me. Subscribe. Thanks a ton. When you unscrew the crown, it's probably the first time you really notice that this isn't a $5,000 watch. Unscrewing the crown doesn't have the resistance of more expensive models. And when winding it, both the resistance but also the sound gives away a movement inside that isn't as premium. It's got that sand in the gears sound to it that soap rods and Miyotas and Selitas just generally have. And there's no sand in the gears. It just has a rough sound to it. So not a totally smooth experience. The date change mechanism doesn't feel effortless. There's a moment where you feel like you have to apply a little bit more torque to the crown to get it to switch, and then suddenly it does. While I had it though, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It kept time. I don't use a time graph. I just look and see, has it lost noticeable time? I never noticed it losing any meaningful amount of time. As for likes and dislikes, right out of the gate, I like watches like the Pole Rotor. I like the original Antarctic models. This is a design that bridges the gap between the sometimes ultra-restrained, ultra-conservative style of classic dress watches on the one hand, and the sometimes over-the-top shininess and ostentatiousness of sports watches like the Aquaterra and the Club Sports and the Datejusts of this world. There's something going on the dial which draws the attention to it without going too far. It's legible, it's aesthetically pleasing to my eye, it's got a bit of that vintage old-school charm that modern Rolex Explorers don't have anymore. The double-domed sapphire also plays a big part in this. I'm a fan of the finishing. I spoke a little bit about this with the Chrono King as well. You can tell that this watch isn't finished to the level of a Tudor or Longines or an Omega. There isn't quite the crispness that I would look for in a watch that costs more than double of this watch. The edge retention near polished parts is not as strong. Also, the polish has a little bit of that melted look to it that you get from less stellar polishing. Obviously, that's also down to the price point, but the thing to keep in mind is that this watch is also built to be a bit of a retro piece. And going back 40 years, cases were softer. Finishing was not as precise. And with that in mind, the potential shortcomings compared to other more modern watches don't matter that much. The bracelet is almost as good as a similarly priced Christopher Ward when it comes to tolerances and that kind of thing. It doesn't have a quick adjust though, and the clasp with the pressed nature to it is a little bit less premium feeling compared to other offerings. If this was positioned as a modern desk diver or modern sports watch, I'd see this as a flaw, but because it's retro, I actually think it's a plus. It's kind of like the ladder bracelet on the A384 from Zenith, which is an inferior bracelet in many, many ways, but for the A384, it works. The case and dial are also a marked step up from the Chrono King. Watching my video afterwards of that review, I think I didn't spend enough time talking about the dial of the Chrono King. I think the Chrono King dial looks good from a distance, but once I got that macro lens out, there were a few visual inconsistencies that were just really apparent. Plots weren't sharp, the hands were a bit rough, and the dial was also on the rough side. That's not the case here. Now you've actually got a really crisp dial. It doesn't have massive visual inconsistencies. Everything just looks more precise. As for dislikes, the clasp on the bracelet is milled, but there's no easy adjust. It's a push pin regulation thing, and to be honest, San Martin will get you a watch and a bracelet post duties and tariffs that cost the same with a fully easy adjust and quick adjust mechanism. I think the embossed caseback is not great. I personally don't like the look, and it's not engraved. It's embossed and it just isn't amazing, and I could do without the bronze or brass or whatever color that is. It's available on different straps as well. I know from the Chrono King that these are pretty soft leathers, but they are not going to be super durable in the long run. They will decay eventually and are not going to hold out as well as a leather you find on an IWC or on a JLC. Not that I'd expect it to. Then there's one thing that really annoyed me, and it's not a thing that's unique to Nivada, but Nivada uses screwed links. And do you think I could find the exact right thread size of screwdriver to fit the screws? No. And I've got so many different screwdrivers for watches. This happens sometimes, especially in the lower end. Also, it's sometimes because the indentation for the actual screw head is just not deep enough. And sometimes I swear it's just better to have without screws and just have push pins. They're just so much easier to deal with. So if you haven't had this sized for you, you are going to have a hassle to get it sized for yourself unless you go down to an AD or a watchmaker who can do it for you. Who's it for? It's for people who like the 60s and 70s. This is for people who have heard of Pan Am and loved the movie Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio. It's not for your mainstream customer who lusts after a, relatively speaking, generic sports watch. This isn't a watch for people who drink cocktails with bright colors and umbrellas. It's for lowball cocktails with dark alcohol, bitters, orange twists, and you are definitely reading Jack Kerouac and Hemingway and contemplating the meaninglessness of life. Or you're just a Mad Men kind of person. Can you get a better finished and spec'd watch at the same price? I'd say sometimes, but most of them are a bit more generic sports watches. It's the Dunes from Christopher Ward or something from a Chinese factory brand. The movement will be the same or similar, the bracelet will be better, the dial will be cleaner, the case will be sharper, but the designs will be much more generic and there'll be much less detailing overall. When you get to the more distinctive designs, the offerings end up being price-wise reasonably comparable. Serica costs a little bit more and their finishing is comparable. The bracelet on the Serica is actually not as good in my opinion, but I believe there's a better soap rod movement inside. So it's kind of 6 of one and half dozen of the other kind of situation. Overall, I think this watch is going to make a whole lot of people happy. It's really well put together. It offers what it should at this price point, and it's not dull. Tuxedo dials are cool. This can be a classy little addition to somebody's collection. Those are my thoughts. Share yours in the comments. If you have experiences with Nivada Grenchen, their customer services, the quality, share them in the comments. People can read and see what individuals have experienced with the brand and also the watches. Hope to see you soon. Like, subscribe. Cheers.